Okay, here we go. Chapter 14. This is the fourth video of this series of Point Counterpoint by Aldous Huxley. And yeah, like I said, chapter 14. So here we go. We are introduced to Philip and Eleanor's child, young Philip. Quarles is the last name of older Philip. We are introduced to him as he is in a geography lesson being taught by Miss Folks, the nanny and caretaker of this child, while the parents are away in India, and she's showing him on a map where exactly his parents are visiting. He doesn't quite grasp it. He's a little kid. It's kind of understandable. But what really is interesting about this child is that he likes to draw. He likes to draw much like his grandfather, John Bidlake, who is Eleanor's dad. And it's very interesting because he's able to capture the detail and I guess capture the light the same way that John is. It gives an example of him drawing a picture of the yard worker mowing the grass, and even in the picture as like a child, he depicts the little grass clippings flying out from behind the mower. You know, he understands the details. He looks very closely at the world around him, especially when he's trying to depict it in his drawings. Now, they're described as fairly crude and whatnot, but nonetheless, he's able to very well capture the little points and everything. It's very interesting too, because John actually gives advice to Eleanor and Philip about this. And he says if you want him to be good at it, don't ever let him have formal education in art anyway. And it's he's very anti-control in what the child draws. You know, as an artist, that kind of makes sense. You know, maybe his idea of true genius isn't something that like art isn't practiced to him. Art is just an inherent ability, and in his case it might be, and even in young Phil's case it might be as well. However, I wonder if that's actually the way Huxley feels, or if Huxley is criticizing John for that. I kind of almost lean towards he's not. I lean towards Huxley kind of agrees with that in a sense. You know, I think maybe practice isn't the right word for it. Maybe the actual education and going to school to be taught how to do it. How are you taught to express how an image makes you feel? How are you taught how to express what you see on a piece of paper the way you want to express it? You know, art is so individualized. It's so, you know, it's me, or it's not me, but it's this is me. This is me giving it to you. The thing with that though that really confuses me is Huxley's art is writing. And writing is such a different beast from drawing or painting, at least in my mind, my semi-uncultured mind. Writing is something that you can definitely practice at and you can work at to find your own voice, but there are also grammatically correct ways of doing it as well in order to actually accurately portray what you're trying to say with words. You need people who are reading it to understand it, and it's, you know, is it Huxley saying maybe we shouldn't be so grammatically strict? Maybe we shouldn't be so structurally strict? Maybe we should just tell a story and try to say something with that story in a creative way? It's very interesting because this is my third Huxley book. I very much enjoyed reading The Island. I very much enjoyed reading Brave New World. But this is very interesting to me because he doesn't, at least not to my memory, convey an idea of any kind of art in the other two, at least as just straight on as much as this. You know, he I don't know, he's very practically minded. He's not so much the abstract whenever it comes to what he writes about, and it's just an interesting little tidbit. I mean, it's just one line. It's almost just a throwaway line, but that's what really got me to thinking for this part of the chapter. In the second part of the chapter, later on, we are transitioned into Eleanor and Philip riding the boat on their way back to England, back to home. They're coming home from India, and that is where Philip gets the brilliant idea of writing a book from different perspectives. which is kind of funny because it's honestly exactly what Huxley is doing with his book right now. He has all these different interweaving stories, and Philip wants to do that as well. So it's almost as if it makes me wonder if this has any kind of realism in how Huxley actually came to this conclusion too. Philip is on a boat. He's listening to these people talk and gossip, and he's taking in the world around him while having a conversation with his wife. And it's he's just talking about how he needs to he's so what am I trying to say here? He wants to write about people, which is something that that's straying away from his usual what he wants to do, what he's sought after in doing. He wants to actually focus on the people and make the people connected together, not necessarily. He wants to write people. He doesn't want to write about people. You know what I mean? He wants to write the perspectives of people. He wants the perspectives of the story to change, not one single narrator. It's more of you go from this perspective to this perspective to this perspective, which I'm really wondering how often had that been done at the time that Huxley had written this book. That really shows my lack of knowledge in books and everything. But most of the books that I've read from that time are usually the same single main character surrounded by a supporting cast. And now in what Huxley has written and what Philip is wanting to write is the whole cast as main characters of their own stories. They just happen to glance off of each other or connect for a little bit and everything. And Huxley's doing a very good job of connecting everything and making everything make sense in this world, in this universe that he's created. And by created, I mean that he's taken influence off of from past philosophers and what have you. But there is a really good moment whenever he's talking about the seriousness of life, and Eleanor has a very, very good comeback for that. Philip is telling her she needs to be more serious whenever talking to him because what he's talking about is very serious. And let's see here, the quote. Here we go. Eleanor says, "I wish you'd begin by looking at me in a new way," said Eleanor with a little laugh, "a more human way." And then Philip says, "But seriously, Eleanor," thinking she's just joking around, and she says, "Seriously?" mocking him. "Being human isn't serious, only being clever." And that's very interesting because Philip has that serious way of looking at everything, that very this cause, or A causes B, or B is caused by A, and there's nothing else with it. And then what Eleanor is saying is like, well, throw C in there. That, if that makes any sense. The whole being serious thing gets in the way of being clever for the sake of comedy, for the sake of trying to make a point, for the sake of trying to be personal, because that is what makes humans human, and that's what sets people apart from each other, is their cleverness. And what I mean by cleverness isn't necessarily, and is not intelligence. Intelligence is more of the serious. Cleverness is what do you add? What do you bring to the people around you? Are you clever in the way that you're able to fix things? Are you clever in the way that you know about people? Are you know what I mean? It's not a world of it's not a world of finding the connections. It's a world of being the connections between people. And that is something that Philip has so distanced himself away from, that he's not able to be inside of the lives that he wants to portray. And that is why he decides that he needs to have a meeting with Rampion. And oh man, am I so excited, because I love Rampion so much. I think his character is amazing. But Philip decides this because he needs to find out how to be that connection. He's trying to be a writer, doesn't actually write anything, ever, at all, just trying to be. And then Rampion is the guy who is actually in it. He's able to write about stuff, he's able to write plays, he's able to make art. He's just in it, and obviously you can tell that Huxley is very fond of the character of Rampion, as he's basing it off of a person that he very much appreciates and admires, D.H. Lawrence. And that really makes me wonder that makes me wonder if Huxley is supposed to be like Philip. Because there's so many times where I know that this book is supposed to be based off intellectuals of the time, and that Huxley has put himself in this book as well. And I wonder if the character of Aldous Huxley isn't supposed to be Philip Quarles. Because Huxley comes from a very scientific, very A causes B kind of family. His grandfather was a very famous biologist. His family just is in that, and he's the one odd duck who went to be a writer. And I'm wondering if it's not he wants to get away from that A causes B kind of writing and more into the artistic, and this is his way to do it. This is the book in which he does that. And you see later on in his other works that he gets even better and better at becoming more personal and creating personal characters with Brave New World and such like. But it's just a really cool chapter, really cool moment, and really cool connection, I think, if it's true. Again, all of this discussion is just speculation. This is just my reaction. This is what I'm thinking about as I'm reading the book. And then upon further reflection, even some of these thoughts are on the fly right as I'm recording. And that's why I stutter so much, and that's why there's so many pauses. But I'm trying to get better. And anyway, that is basically the end of chapter 14, with Philip deciding to meet with Rampion. And I am very excited for that meeting. I cannot wait. Anyway, next up is chapter 15. Okay, chapter 15. Now, you're probably tired of hearing it. I'm tired of talking about it. But we got Walter, Marjorie, and Lucy again. Oh yeah, the old trifecta. I'm kind of fuzzy on the definition of that word. It's 3 people. The love triangle. And hey, it finally actually gets kind of interesting, because it's not just Walter being an asshat. Now it's like, oh, okay, well, he's staying with Marjorie. But only to support her. Only because she realizes she is too dependent upon him in order to go anywhere else. She's stuck with him. She's stuck with him even after everything that he has done to her, everything that he continues to do to her, and everything that he will probably, until the end of the book, continue to do to her. And for this, he feels guilty. So he starts actually treating her nicely. Finally, it took him realizing he's being a jerk to her to treat her nicely. He will not love her. He refuses to love her. But at least now he's staying. And he's not necessarily wishing for her to die, but still kinda, and he's dreading the moment in which she'll actually have the child. And that's tough for him. He shouldn't have done what he did. Anyway, yeah. His guilt is making him nicer because he's guilty for treating her badly and for the affair that he's continuing to have with Lucy. Now, his affair with Lucy, while this whole thing was going on with him and Marjorie, his affair with Lucy is getting interesting because he is no longer just simply physically attracted to her. It is revealed that is all that he had, even though it was kind of hinted that it wasn't, that he actually thought she was something. But now it was given that all he wanted was just to have the physical confrontation, whatever, not confrontation, but physical embrace. Trying to put this in non-explicit terms is not easy. Anyway, yes, now he has fallen for her. Now he cares about her. And now he's asking if she cares about him. And one of the greatest things is he asks her if she loves him. And she says, love? That's quite a big word, isn't it? And I love that quote. And I love that quote because it is such a simple quote. It's such an easy quote to understand. It is such a dumb throwaway one-liner kind of quote. But it is really brilliant because love, four-letter word, very short, obviously. It's not a big word. But the impact that it can have is huge. It's huge. And I love so much Huxley's one-liner little quotes, and I will be sharing more of them as they come because they're becoming my favorite parts of the book. The little one-liner, kind of cheesy-ish, but not really. The jokes, basically. The jokes, but then the jokes that actually have kind of a meaning that makes sense. And this is just a throwaway. This is one of the worst ones, but still, I like it. Anyway, love. It's kind of a big word. Or it's rather a big word, as the actual quote says. Anyway, it's a small word. It's a small word with a big impact. And that's what Lucy is talking about when she says that in response. And she never says she actually loves him and everything. And anytime she starts to feel that way, she tries to focus. She tries to push it away. She pushes him away. She won't have him. And until she gets over the emotional stuff. And then they go back to having the physical. And it's very interesting how the sensuality of it is there. It's obvious. It's very present. And that's all Lucy sees it as. That's all Lucy wants to see it as, too. She's starting to have the emotions also, but all she wants is just that physical attraction towards it and the way it makes her feel good and all that stuff. He is confusing it for tenderness and passion and showing that he cares for her emotionally through the acts that they are doing. And it's very funny. The reason Lucy says that she's only wanting after the physical and all that is because she doesn't want to be tied down. Two, it's an old feeling. It's an old barbaric, as she kind of describes, feeling to want to have that love for somebody, to want to have that relationship between two people, where they don't just do the physical stuff, but to also actually be romantically involved. And so her idea of the modern way of love is to just be physical. And there's no criticism against it, in the book, and I have no criticism against that way of thinking either. But there is a very, very neat thing. It's she's talking about, she's comparing it to like airplanes and cargo and how technology is approaching, getting more and more better, faster, but it takes away from the emotional side. She never says it's emotion. She never says that though. Where Huxley says that it takes away from the emotion is Lucy is criticizing Walter for loving her, and she says try to be a little more up to date. And I love Walter's response. One of the only things I like Walter about in this entire book so far is this response, and he says I prefer to be human. And that is such an attack on the way progress can change the ideals and change how people interact with each other. And Huxley, in this way, kind of indirectly using this sexual encounter and this love and everything, he uses that then to describe his criticism against the modern idea of love, and in that, the modern idea of progression, technological advancement, and how it separates people from having a personal relationship with each other. And that's so cool. That's just cool. That's as deep as I can go. That's cool. And I'm dumb. And yeah. Anyway, that's one of my favorite parts. And it's so simple, it's just simple. It's just so simple. You probably hear that and everything, but it's just, I don't know. We had a 200-page build up to it, and then that's the lines that they give. Try to be a little more up to date. I prefer to be human. And I think that is so relevant to today in so many ways. So many ways. Huxley has that knack in his writing to just ring out throughout years and years and years of change, and yet he still is hitting the root of what connects everyone no matter the time. And that I love Huxley. Such a good author. Such a good author. Anyway, that's pretty much how chapter 15 ends. And yeah, the next video will probably go on to chapter 16. This video was a little longer, but I think it was a good couple chapters. I think it was a very dense couple chapters, especially that last one. I think that last one really had a lot, especially with that line. Anyway, we will see you next time for chapter 16, and we will get more. In chapter 16, we will see Mark Rampion and Burlap meet. Ooh, yeah, I've already read this. It's good. It's a good chapter. Remember, this is not Philip and Rampion. This is Burlap, the newspaper. Yeah, it's a good chapter. Anyway, see you then.